Hello, and welcome to NAEA's 5th Town Hall, Art Education Continuum, building a pipeline to foster future art educators and strengthen our field. It's a long conversation with some very special guests. Hi, I'm Jorge Lucero. I have the great privilege and honor of being the Executive Director of the National Art Education Association. And I'm a lifelong art educator with over 10 years in the classroom as a visual art elementary middle school teacher, as well as a central office administrator in Pittsburgh, Chicago, and then a little time at the Kennedy Center before joining NAEA. So thrilled that you could all be with us tonight. Before we get started, we always like to take a moment to acknowledge the First Nations, First Peoples, where all of our communities, where we all come from. We want to acknowledge and take a moment to honor the local. We also want to take a moment to acknowledge this very unique and unexpected year that we've all been through, and everyone has experienced a great number of ups and downs, and we send our good energy and good wishes to everybody. Please know that closed captioning is an option for our conversation, and you can find that under transcript, and just turn that on if you need it. A little bit about our town hall series. Like I said, this is our 5th one, and this was created as an answer to address art educators' concerns and needs in the moment. So things that are top of mind to help folks cope with the everyday, but also an added dose of looking forward and looking ahead. And so in order to live up to this town hall idea, in our conversation that you're going to experience in a moment, you'll find that folks that registered submitted questions in advance, and those questions from your voices are embedded throughout our conversation. So thank you so much for those questions, which help to shape what we talk about. I want to talk a little bit about the format. If you haven't joined us for a town hall before, it's a little bit different. So we take a long conversation format. That doesn't mean that we are speaking for 3 or 4 hours. What it means is that it's a conversational relay. So you'll see a pair of individuals start a conversation. One acts as interviewer, one acts as interviewee. They have 6 minutes for their conversation on some specific topics. At minute 5, they'll hear a chime. That's their 1-minute warning. They'll wrap up their conversation, and then the interviewer will exit. The interviewee will turn into the interviewer as the next guest arrives. If you don't understand that, it's fine. It will all make sense as it unfolds in front of you, and we have rehearsed and are excellent at this, so no worries. But it's a unique way to hear particular vantage points and points of view from individuals and different pairings. So the conversation will have a thread as it moves along. Please keep the chat active throughout the conversation. If there's something you want to comment on, there's a question or a topic you'd like to see addressed, we'll do our best to address it in the moment. And if we have time at the end, I'll try to save a few minutes for some Q&A to cover some things that we might not have covered throughout our conversation. We had over 300 folks register. We're over 100 live right now, and we're streaming on Facebook Live, and this will be recorded and available to share as well. So with that, I think we are ready to jump in and begin. So please join me in welcoming our first guest for the conversation, my good friend and colleague, Jorge Lucero, who's the Associate Professor and Chair of Art Education at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, Illinois. Get that order right. Jorge, my friend, thank you so much for joining us in the conversation tonight.
What's up, Mario? Nice to see you.
It's good to see you too. So as I said, members and registrants already submitted some questions that are top of mind. So we're just going to jump right in. So Stephanie from Mississippi asks, how can we encourage more high school students to consider art education as a career?
Well, I mean, automatically the thing that they do, right? They are themselves, and they're wonderful to their students. I know so many students who go into art education who say, when you ask them the question, why did you do it? They say, I had an amazing art teacher, right? So that's the first thing, keep being awesome, right? I think the most obvious things are probably, the two most obvious ones are, it's a totally legit way to continue to work in the arts, after you get out of school. It's a way of continuing to work within those discourses. Obviously, the other one is that you would be working with people all the time, especially young people, or most of the time it's young people. And so if that's something that's exciting to you, you know, teaching art in particular is an amazing way to do it. I think if I had to point out a couple of other ways that it can be done, that or that we could maybe encourage our students to want to go into art education, that maybe we don't think of right away, is to help them to understand that maybe art teaching can be understood as something that is a real frontline, a real exciting frontline action that you get to be a part of, right? That when you're a teacher, you take on a creative practice with real world dynamics, real problems, real opportunities to affect change. So it's really like getting your fingers in there and having an effect on the world around you, on the worlds around you.
Absolutely. And just for our audience out there, I've had the pleasure of knowing Jorge for a long time, and I knew him first when he was a high school art teacher in Chicago. And so I've seen his ideas and the words that he's speaking really come into play in practice. And when we were in conversation preparing for tonight, one of the things that really struck me is that, isn't it wonderful that many of us are so passionate about the arts, but that there is a career that is in our passion, right? And so you can really match that passion with, a path through life.
Yeah.
And I think that's an undersold story that part of tonight's conversation is really interested in addressing. So
Can I add a little caveat to this, Mario, that just occurred to me?
yeah.
So I'm the first person to go to college, and I'm the child of parents who came over from Mexico, and for them, when they said my kid's the first one to go to college, and when I said I'm going to study art, like when they knew that I was going to be a teacher, they had they felt they rested more assured in what I was doing, right? So it really is a great way for even students who are first generation college students to be encouraged to and maybe to put the parents at ease about taking up the arts as a choice.
Absolutely. I have a similar story where I added the education piece and I wasn't in love with it until I was student teaching. And
Yeah,
then I thought, oh my gosh, I love teaching as much as I love the arts. And
yeah,
how lucky.
yeah,
And thankfully my parents were also right about
yeah.
that. So um our colleague Aaron wants to know, what do you forecast the outlook will be for higher education and art education, considering the challenges in funding in pre-K to 12 art that we're staring down right now?
Well, funding varies, right? So I guess it depends from state to state. The one thing I would say, I guess, is that aspect of it is a grassroots effort, and we should all like be at it. The getting the value of the arts out there, getting the value of studying art education, as we were just talking about right now, into the public discourse. One, right?
Yeah.
The other thing I would say about higher ed in particular is that we don't. Yes, we are in the business of helping our developing teachers get their licenses so that they could become through 12 practitioners. But higher ed it's so much more. It's so broad and so varied of a practice. It really is a humanities field where social science, art, philosophy, and the academy, everything meets together. It's really, in my opinion, is an exciting time to be an art education scholar. And K through 12 is one part of it. It's a huge part of it, right? But there are all these other moving components. If it's something you're interested in, anybody who's out there, something you're interested in, get in touch with the higher ed people, particularly in NAEA. They're so generous, so open, would be ready to talk to you about whether or not this is like a next step for anyone out there.
I love that. And I geek out about the like this arts ed ecosystem, right? Like that might sound a little nerdy or too big picture, but it's really the idea that whether you're a student or a teacher in K to 12 or higher ed or museum or community, like we all play a role and sort of accentuate each other's roles and are actually sort of like critically interdependent,
Yeah.
right, on each other. And so, we're really, NAEA is really committed to talking through that and living up to that, right? That interdependency that's really actually healthy for our ecosystem.
Yeah, and most of
So,
our emails can be found online, so we can be reached out to.
mhm, that's right. And I think my colleagues can probably pop any other resources in the chat as well. So, Jennifer in South Carolina wants to know, as a clinical supervisor, how can I best prepare my student teachers for the post-COVID classroom environment and curriculum as well?
This is a great one. Well, I think the COVID moment can be understood as an artistic material, actually. How do we deal with material? We test it, right? We learn where it resists. We learn what its possibilities are. We're going to have to teach our students to continue that same lesson that we've been teaching them forever, which is that teaching is an emergent practice, it's not a prescribed practice. And you have to lean into it. You have to get familiar with the material. You have to, if you're teaching from a remote situation, or if you're teaching within social distancing in your school, what is the materiality of that? How is it that we can make that a pliable thing so that we can continue to be creative, innovative, and excited about what we're doing, and that our students could feel that way too?
Yeah, and it's like I certainly wouldn't say that any aspect of this year has been easy, but I would say that art educators are really good at experimentation
Yeah.
and innovation. And so by looking at the opportunities that virtual and hybrid have provided, we've seen some pretty interesting new things emerge. And there's, even just the way that I might share a demonstration or an example, there's a little bit more facility there sometimes for certain pieces, right? Anyways, I can go on, but I want to make sure that we honor member voices. So this one came in specifically for you, and I think it builds off of something that we've already touched
Yeah.
on. But Maha wants to know, can you please identify approaches in providing quality learning in visual art higher education moving on from the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, just to sort of keep going on that previous answer, I think it's a golden opportunity, actually. I know it's frustrating. Like any new material, I think it can originally present itself as something to overcome. But I think it's a golden opportunity, perhaps to teach something to our students that artists have, or that artists develop, independence, for example. And what I mean by that is, trying to figure out exactly what does it mean to be an artist when nobody's like looking over your shoulder, or giving, checking off, making sure that things are getting done, right? And if our assignments aren't working for that, what can we do? What can we do in order to be able to, what should we be shifting and paying attention to, that happens particularly in our students' homes, or in this remote moment, or through social distancing, that could potentially change the way we're even teaching the things that we're teaching in our classrooms.
Absolutely. I mean, the additional external stimuli, the sort of other students in the room at home, respecting privacy, but also creativity. I mean, it's a whole new set of rules, right? That we're sort of developing as we're living through it. I mean, we're going to look back and what an amazing time.
Right.
Unfortunately, our time together, you and I, our conversation is coming to a close, but we'll always like to end each of these pairings with the question about self-care. So, Jorge, what are your tips for self-care? What are you doing for yourself right now?
Well, I'm an optimist, so I would say stay optimistic, try to stay inspired, find your kin, find the people who are wanting to stay inspired, stay optimistic with you. And if you want to take something up as a challenge, figure out how to fold your practices into each other. So if there's so many things that you're directing your attention to, are there allowances in art, in contemporary art in particular, that show us how to fold our practices into each other?
Lovely. Really appreciate the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you, Mario. So I'm taking the baton from you, Mario, and I want to introduce Jasmine to everybody, Jasmine Floyd. Jasmine Floyd is a pre-service art educator at Miami University in Ohio, a place where a former alum from the University of Illinois, Stephanie Danker, is the professor at, and she's actually Jasmine's teacher, right?
Yeah, I think she actually put them in the chat.
All right. She said hi to us already. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Jasmine. How did you get into art ed, and how has this past year been for you?
So for me, I've always been into art. I've always done pencil drawings and portraits, pretty well in art class. And when I realized that that was an actual talent, that I could actually do art, that was when, of course, my secondary art teacher, she would encourage me and support all my ideas that I had. So just having an art teacher who was so supportive and, you know, pushed me and guided me to where I wanted to be, and just having someone like that inspired me to want to be an art educator. And so, you know, and now I'm about to graduate with in art education. So that's how that happened. But
congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That's coming up.
And then also this past year, it's taught me a lot about myself as a person and a pre-service art educator, especially learning how to, taking all the skills that I have learned as a pre-service art educator and taking it to an online platform, you know, because like, I mean, nobody expected this pandemic to happen. So to have to like learn how to teach art online, it was a challenge in itself, but I got through it, and I know I would get through this last part of my art ed journey too. So during this time.
This is real. That's real trial by fire there. If you make it through this part, you can handle anything else after that. I'm going to jump into some of the questions here that some of our members have sent in. Charmaine in Mississippi asks, would like to hear your thoughts about this. How can parents be encouraged to support their children's goals of becoming artists and art educators?
So I'd say to start with encouraging someone is to know what art education is altogether. So doing the research, or even asking their kid's art teacher if they have any resources or anywhere they can look to learn more about it. And especially firstly asking what their child's goal is and why they want to be an art educator to begin with, so they can properly encourage them and continue to encourage their goals as well. Like I think it's important, and it's something I've learned in my undergrad, is to know my why I am to wanting to be a teacher, why my teaching philosophy and all that stuff, especially as I've been applying to grad school, just knowing why I wanted to be an art educator. So that's important to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that why question is something that you'll ask for the rest of your career. It's like every year it gets renewed. There might be different answers that emerge, right? But it's just like a continuous question, not for a bad reason, but it's just an important self-reflection, right? Stephanie from Mississippi says, from her experience, most art teachers choose to pursue a teaching career because of an influential art teacher. And that's something we've already spoken about. How can we encourage high school art teachers to encourage students to pursue a career in art education?
And I'll repeat it again, that my experience was having my secondary art teacher, Angela Mulcahy. Her ability to inspire is, again, why I wanted to be in art education to begin with. Like I said, she always supported me in my goals. She even took me to a college to do a tour of an art ed program, and I even remember her having posters of different colleges and their program informationals and stuff like that. And I mean, and I know you said this as well, that you're first gen, I'm also first generation college student. So like having someone else who has been to college and has all that information, especially as far as, and is already in the field that I'm wanting to pursue, was really helpful for me. Because at that point I always need as much information on anything as I can.
Yeah. I think sometimes there are even like specific terms or like specific lingo that gets used in college or college admissions processes that, you know, a lot of high school students don't really know, right? Or, you know, and they're too shy to ask, you know, like financial stuff, stuff about the actual portfolio process, all of those things. So um, I also remember my teacher having a bunch of posters in my old high school. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like that really helped to like for me to know where I wanted to apply and whatnot. And also to answer that other question on how they can encourage their students, I'd say um, allowing and encouraging all students, especially students who show interest in art, to find art that makes them speak for them as individuals. Because of course, wanting to teach art starts with liking it and having a passion for it. I'd say even maybe even have a survey or just to see who's even interested. And also just, as I'm always going to say, just educating and maybe even if it doesn't have to be a whole class period, just like taking the time like, oh, this is what you can do with in the art field, this is what you can do in art education, and this is what you can, this is the type of settings you could teach in and all that type of stuff. Cause that's also another thing that I'm learning is like, that we don't have to just teach in the classroom setting when it comes to art education. So just educating.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And I can guarantee you that there are several people at each university near you waiting to be invited to come into your classrooms to present on their schools. So making those connections, I think, can sometimes be really important.
Exactly.
I'm gonna close this out here with the same question that we're closing all of these out with, which is, can you talk about your tips for self-care?
So I know something that has always worked well for me is when I'm stressed or I would always just put my energy into something that will not stress me out. So let's say like if I was in a studio class and that would stress me out, just because I always turn to art for everything, just do art that for fun or like I have this Cricut Joy and I use that all the time and that I make so many crafts and different type of motivational quotes and stuff like that I can put on my wall. So just I would say just putting your energy into something that again that brings you happiness, that makes you feel good. So that's what I'm saying.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, thanks, Jasmine. It was so great to meet you. Let me know if you want me to send you an application for our graduate program. And I'll let you go now.
Okay, thank you. Well,
Thank
now
you.
I'm in time. So next we're going to introduce Tom Nebb. He's the NAEA president, visual arts educator at Dodge Elementary School in East Amherst, New York. So hello, Tom. How are you doing? And welcome to. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I'm great, Jasmine. Thank you very much. And I got to give you a lot of credit because I don't think I would have been able to do something like this when I was a pre-service educator. So props to you.
Yeah, this is my first one, so I'm
You did great. You did great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So to start, we'll start with our first question from Amy in Indiana. She's inquiring about recommendations for a new fine arts teacher. It's their second career in the hybrid platform of learning, and also any advice on finding employment.
Okay. Yeah, those are great questions. And I think a lot of it is understanding that whether you're a teacher who's been teaching for 30 years or you're a new teacher in this mode, everyone feels like they're the first year teacher this year. Everyone I've talked to and that I work with. So understand that. And something I read somewhere was just do the best you can. I mean, that's all anybody can ask of you. As long as you're, doing what you need to do and figuring it out, then you're doing a great job. I'd also encourage not only you, but all teachers to take advantage of networks and resources that exist. For example, the NAEA Remote Learning Toolkit has a lot of resources for teachers in the hybrid mode or the remote learning format. take advantage of like the online group for ideas and advice and resources. There is so much there. Or if you have a question to pose to other folks, as well as maybe your state website might have resources. Take advantage of those. I would also, I mean, for finding the employment question, I really, in this day and age, I would almost have the same answer. Reach out to the networks that exist. Let folks know, hey, I'm looking for such and such a job in a certain area, and put it out there in your state or in a region or part of the country, and then use these different networks, Facebook, Collaborate, which is NAEA's kind of social media site, but take advantage of those.
Thank you. And I'm sure everybody, or especially my peers that I also see are in the chat, could appreciate this advice as we're moving on to the next chapter of our lives, looking for employment. So, and then the next question I have, is from Laura from New Jersey, asking, how can state leaders support diverse educators? How can teachers create experiences to help students see themselves as future art teachers? And what is NAEA doing?
Such important questions in the age that we're living in. And being in a profession and being in an association that is overwhelmingly white, we need to make sure that we're inviting all practitioners to the table. Make sure they have a voice, make sure they feel welcome, and that they have a reason to participate. I would also say make sure state organizations, associations, take a look at your processes and policies to make sure that they are inclusive. It's so easy to have something that's just been the practice year after year and then realize, oh, we're not really reaching out to everybody. And then I would say follow NAEA's lead on kind of the things they're doing, and then take that back into the state level to see how you can make those same changes and support the same initiative. I would also survey diverse educators that are in your area, whatever that may be, and see what their true needs are. I mean, you can't really help them and meet their needs unless you find out what they are. And then as well as providing, that training and PD for your board members and, any interested members, so that you can gradually get to this point where you want to be that, all-inclusive, diverse organization.
Thank you. Did you also, I don't know if you answered that, what is NAEA doing?
Oh, yes, thank you. NAEA, of course, we have our ED&I commission, which came out of our task force, which came up with, I think, 16 recommendations for the organization, which we're working at some of them right now, and eventually we'll get 2021-25 strategic vision, which will be hopefully be wrapping up in the next month or so, the creation of it, I should say. We'll have ED&I goals as kind of a central tenet, and then it'll be woven throughout the entire plan as well, because we feel it is so important. And then one other thing that NAEA is doing is creating what's called an NAEA Cultural Competency in Teaching and Leadership Certificate Program, which will be a great opportunity for members who want to pursue more in that vein of learning and changing the way we do things.
Thank you. I think you gave a lot of good resources that we can look at, and also just hearing the ways that NAEA is holding themselves accountable as far as all the goals with the ED&I initiatives and stuff like that. So we have one more question from Connie from Florida. What is the greatest benefit you can envision coming out of virtual art education to impact future art education?
I think of this in a couple, really quickly. Short term, for all of educators, I think it's an opportunity that parents are discovering what we actually do and what it takes and what it involves. In the long term, I think because of the use of technology and the reliance on it, I think it's an opportunity for art education to incorporate more of the media art standards into what we do. If you haven't done anything, maybe taking a step, put your toe in the water, And if you've been doing a little bit, to do a little bit more. So I think there's an opportunity there. And just bringing things into the classroom, right? You don't always have to go somewhere. You can have a speaker easily pop in that way. You can do a virtual field trip. I think these things that we're discovering that makes things a lot more accessible.
Yes, definitely. I think at first glance, it did feel like it's kind of impossible to do all these things online, but there is a lot of flexibility, like you said, and a lot of more accessibility. So to end our part of the conversation, what are you doing for self-care? Any tips for self-care, or what are you doing?
Yeah, and I mean, we all know just how tough it is, and it's it's okay to cry when you need to. But I always say control your own narrative. And what I mean by that is think about the influences you allow into your life. And you can think about who are the teachers at school that are the positive ones and the ones that are kind of the naysayers about things, and surround yourself with the positive ones and interact with them. Monitor, kind of what you watch and listen to, so you don't get sucked into this negative news stream, or make sure that there's some kind of balance there as well. And taking time to be creative. You're not creative unless you're being creative, if that makes sense, right? You got to actually practice and use that muscle. What I do with the kids all the time, I just try to make them laugh. And I teach the K through 4 kids, and I make them laugh, which is fun. And then to hear them laugh, what it's like to hear a kid laugh. It just makes you feel better. So invite laughter into your life. So those are my tips.
Well, I think those are pretty great tips. Well, thank you for the conversation. I will pass the baton to you. So,
thank you, Jasmine. All right, I would like to introduce Namisa Samanthapudi. She is a senior at Spring Valley High School in Columbia, South Carolina. And again, Namisa, I will give you props. Again, I don't think I'm very timid, believe it or not. But it's really nice to have you here with us tonight and to share. I would also like everyone to know that Namisa is a member of our NAEA advisory committee, for working on our new strategic vision. And she's also a National Art Honor Society member at her high school. So great to have you involved in all those things, Namisa, and welcome.
Thank you.
Let me just ask you, how has this school year been for you? And then kind of what's next for you after high school?
So this school year has definitely been something new, but it's always something to learn from and expand yourself upon. And as of right now, I'm still undecided on which college I want to go to, but that's a whole other experience that I'm looking forward to as well.
Absolutely. Well, I wish you all the best with those big decisions. Let me dive into some of our member questions here. First question is from Karen in Ohio. And she asked, how do we build bridges to identify potential future art educators between high school to the university? And as a current high school student, what do you think would help build interest?
Okay, so you want someone you can reach out to who will be a mentor for you. And this mentor would be someone who has a better idea or experience on what the student has to go through and can provide insight on their experiences. And just like Jasmine said, you want someone who supports your goals and encourages you no matter what, and will always motivate you to do your best. So for example, at my high school, my junior year, we had college representatives come, and they used to tell us about, oh, come to our college, we have this, we have that. So I think having art educators come out to schools and talking about their experiences and encouraging kids would not only, you wouldn't directly, it isn't an opportunity to directly reach out to the student, but you can also recruit others and motivate them to explore this field and possibly allow them to have this interest.
Absolutely. I think it's so important to have that, person that inspires and encourages and gives you the straight on, what it would be like to be in that profession. Rory from Arizona asks, how does technology become a part of future curriculum which allows for equity in the arts. And what do you see as the benefits of technology from your own experience?
So, especially with COVID, I think we all know the power of technology. We can all see each other as if we're all in person. And I believe technology allows us to understand and empathize with others, even when we're not physically with them. So, you can hear more about issues that aren't very popular and address messages through art that, once again, aren't very popular and not really recognized for. So, for example, as a National Art Honor Society student, our organization got to get in contact with Pakistani kids, and we had the opportunity to paint portraits of them. So it's kind of a way of communicating with them no matter the distance. And this year we're actually painting portraits for Syrian refugees. So technology overall allows you to invite others to share their voice with the world, and can overall create such a great impact and lead to better and greater things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, what a great way to connect with other students, you know, around the world, right? And when I went to school, we had to mail them a letter or something like that. What an opportunity that we have. So that's awesome. Um, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your National Art Honor Society experience and the role that art might play in your future.
Mhm. So, National Art Honor Society has been a very meaningful experience for me. And so far, I've been in 3 years. And not only have I had the opportunity to meet amazing friends, but I also got closer to my teachers, such as Mr. Drews. And I would not be here without him today. So, thank you so much for this opportunity. And especially through experiences that I've had, I'm able to see how art fits into the real world. So, for example, I, along with other members, we went to Sesqui National Park, or I think it's actually a local park, and we got to paint an outdoor classroom for students there. So, once again, we're advancing art education by stepping out of the typical classroom environment and kind of exploring other areas that students can learn from. And as for my future, I plan to major in industrial engineering, and that's kind of like a combination of creativity and time. So
Mhm.
time matters a lot to everyone. We want to create a big impact because we're not here for a long time. And I'm really looking forward to this experience and hopefully revolutionize the world.
Awesome. Awesome. Love those great, big, powerful goals like that. I just want to ask you something. You said you went out to the park and you painted. Did you say you taught others painting or you experienced the painting?
I experienced the painting. I wish I could
All
teach
right.
kids though. That would be definitely another experience. That'd be great.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, you could inspire other younger students, right? Um, so let me finish up with our question we're asking everybody. What are your tips for self-care, either for others or for yourself?
Okay, so I think it's always important to live in the present moment and not have any expectations. So I think, especially with COVID, we're all like, oh, I hope 2021 COVID will go away. I'm going to live my best life, all this and that. And although the motivation is great, it's always good to focus on the present and what you can do now, because what you do now really impacts your future. And so thinking too far ahead sometimes, it kind of like slows you down a little bit, and you have this intention that necessarily wouldn't work out in the end, and you have no idea which direction you'll go in. So I think that focusing on the present right now and understanding what you're capable of right now will really help you prepare for the future, and hopefully you can do greater and better things and just be a person.
Absolutely. I definitely agree that if you're just waiting for the future for COVID to go away or something to happen, you're missing so much in between. We know
Exactly.
it's tougher now, but you're still missing out on other opportunities. So, Namisa, thank you very much, and I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, so now I would like to reintroduce Mr. Mario. Mr. Mario, welcome back. What a great conversation we're all having. And we have a few more questions from members. Phoenix from South Carolina asks, how do we get past the alienation of our educators of color? So, for example, we say we are inclusive, but our behaviors suggest otherwise. So how would you respond?
Yeah, thanks, Namisa. That's a really important question that I'd say the staff and board and many of our members are thinking about. And, I always start with the I, or start with the self with this work, and to really, you know, um, ask myself questions about who I am and how I interact with others, and maybe what the history of my organization is, and really come to some self-understanding. And then I like to branch out from there, go one ripple in the pond out, and start to build some trusted colleagues, build relationships, connect with others to really understand their experience, right? So really take time to stop and pause and listen and ask questions, because I think a big challenge in this work to be more inclusive is that, a lot of folks think they're right. And really the work to do is just to listen and understand others. And there's many different perspectives to value. So, we're really trying to slow down in a way with NAEA to understand folks' stories and understand if there's barriers to being welcomed into the art education community. And we really want to take action to remove those barriers. So, it's slowing down, and in other ways it's speeding up to get, once we have that understanding, to really take some action. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it connects with the idea of communication. So we're all trying to get in everybody's voice, their perspective, anything of that kind. So
Absolutely. And, sometimes that means tamping down my voice, right? Tamping down our own voices and not listening for me to say the next best thing, but just me listening to really understand and honor you. So that's the work. Yeah.
So Karen in New York wants to know your thoughts about creating a position paper on what should be included in arts education curriculum for pre-service teachers. So basically, what kinds of tools are available?
Yeah, I love this question. So I promise I'm not doing a commercial, but I do like to promote that NAEA has a vast amount of resources, and sometimes there's so many that you may not realize that the thing that you're looking for is there. So we do have policy and position statements that members have vetted and written that address many aspects that are directly connected to pre-service, and then some that are ancillary. But I think that's a great place to start. And then, as my colleagues mentioned earlier, our remote learning toolkit has a pre-service section, and those resources have been curated and vetted by our members. So, it's not just going to the Google universe and getting 10,000 responses, but these are things that have been curated and been really thoughtfully chosen for pre-service members. But, I think the idea around the pre-service curriculum is a great thing to explore. And as Tom said, we're working on our new 5-year strategic vision, and pre-service serves as a really important component of that. So I think that's a great idea to add to the mix. So really appreciate that.
This is definitely great advice we can all learn from. And what are you hearing as trends and takeaways from this conversation?
So I thought I captured all these great ideas from our run through last night, and I got even more for this evening. So I'm really excited. So this list is pretty awesome. I feel like they're chapters of a book. So what I'm hearing as takeaways from our conversation is I love this: utilize the materiality of the moment, right? Like really look at this as, sort of part of our art form and our art making. Focus on the why. Or someone tonight said, know my why. I love that. Know my why. Encourage and inspire. Be optimistic. Depend on your network. Find your kin. I'm telling you, these are all great chapter titles. Invite in laughter. Really embrace meditation. Live in the present moment. Find your mentors. And I think that really goes for any age. Right? There's, having someone to look up to or to connect with that knows a little bit more than you provides so much guidance in life and helps you avoid some potholes that you might not need to run over otherwise. Be an integral part of the ecosystem, right? Like understand that, like you may have your role and that can be wonderful and great, but when you can find that interconnectedness, it just strengthens the entire system. And that is both rewarding for the individual, but also for the group. And then I'm still in your quote for this last one, which is to revolutionize the world. It's inspiring. I appreciate the energy behind it. Yeah,
of course. And I hope everyone has been having a great time and taking something away from all of our conversations. So what advice would you give to our educators right now?
So I apologize to everyone who's attended a town hall before because I give the same answer every time, but I think it's just that important, which is don't put yourself last, right? as an educator, I know that you are selfless and you're putting your students and your school community first, and you're probably putting your family first. And I urge you to slow down and take care of yourself, and find within each day a way to reward yourself or a way to tend to yourself, whether that's a quiet moment, a walk outside, your favorite meal. And like a good friend of mine says, the more senses that you can engage simultaneously, the calmer and more rewarded you'll be. So find that great candle, find that piece of music, find that great meal, and enjoy them all at the same time. So please reinvest in yourself, because we need you to be well so that your students can be well.
And a similar question that relates to the previous one you just discussed about is the closing question. So what are your tips for self-care?
Yeah, probably like a lot of folks on the town hall, you know, food delivery has really been my friend through COVID. But then I realized that that's not an answer to the majority of the week. And so I've re-embraced spending time cooking meals, and I forgot how much I love the process. I'm also a little bit addicted to, I love multicolored root vegetables. This is way too nerdy and specific, but I really do. And so I'm discovering every multicolored root vegetable that I can prepare in a million different ways. But I just love the process of cooking, and that feels like an investment in yourself. So that's been taking up a lot of my time. And then I'm also a big Star Wars and Marvel Comics fan. So I've been watching a lot of the Disney Plus features on them. So that's been fun too.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Mr. Moyer, for your words of wisdom and advice. And now I'd like to pass it on back to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Namisa. And by the way, if you need a letter of recommendation for any of your applications, you can count me in. 100%. Meant to say that earlier. All right. So we're going to take a minute to get to a couple other questions. But before I do that, I just wanted to thank and acknowledge we have a number of NAEA board members that have joined the town hall tonight. And I just wanted to thank and acknowledge them for all their support and love and encouragement. And they helped to bring many of our panelists to the town hall. So I just wanted to thank and encourage all of them for being part of this. And then can we do a nice raucous round of applause virtually for our guests, for Jorge, for Jasmine, for Tom, for Namisa, for joining us tonight and sharing their wisdom and expertise. And we're not done yet, but I want to make sure that we give them our love and thanks. So we've been monitoring the chat, and it seems like we covered a lot of the topics that were on people's minds in advance, but also in the moment. But we did have a couple that came up. And so there was one question around what supports we might predict that student teachers will need in the future going back to face-to-face. So I think that kind of foreshadows, the impact of this moment into future moments, and, going back to face-to-face for student teaching. What additional words of wisdom or advice might we share? I'm opening it up to the group.
I'll just open with a very quick answer, which is, and I don't know, it's not the answer, but it's just a quick answer, that more backup plans and more like emergency things will have to be like set up continuously as you're even developing your in-person practice, because you never know. I mean, we find ourselves in a moment that we never expected ourselves to be in. And to be honest, all I've seen is people like rise to the challenge, and they've been doing it so stellarly. But now that we know that this is a possibility, let's make that part of our game plan.
Absolutely. Yeah. Having all those backup resources in your toolbox. The challenge with this year is we were all caught off guard. But now that, we've had a little bit of time and traction, I see a lot of educators, finding new ways to use recordings, especially for demonstrations. And so once you have that library of those kind of resources, it's like, if I was a student teacher, I'd be thinking about, are there a couple topics or lessons that I might want to get those recordings really polished so that they're ready to go, whether they're for the unit I have planned or for the backup unit. But anything like that. Tom, I wonder if you had any, I see you nod, and I think maybe you have something else to add in here, or.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, like, we say we don't know what that next situation might be, right? Because like this one caught us off guard, that the next one wills too. But I think we just have to realize that we're a community and you're not alone in your classroom, right? There, as we discovered, there's a lot of people you can reach out to, a lot of groups, and don't be afraid to do that. That doesn't mean you're less of an educator. It probably means you're more of an educator when you're research, because you're reaching out, doing your research, finding the resources that you need. So don't be afraid to ask. And then once we're back in the classroom, if you really haven't had that opportunity very much, right, just give yourself an opportunity to develop those skills that you need now in the classroom. Once we get back to that we're different than when we were virtual. So, give yourself that opportunity.
Great. Jasmine or Nemisa, I just want to give you a chance if you want to weigh in. You good? Okay. And then the other topic, Jorge, go ahead.
All right, somebody in the chat brought up a really good point. Marita Fitzpatrick said equity issues are so important since so many of our children have no supplies at home. I think this situation has been a little bit like a black light. It has really shown us a lot of things that perhaps we hadn't seen or had been ignoring for a long time. And, fold all that stuff in now too, because those are realities, even when we're going to be back together again.
Yeah, absolutely. I know when we were prepping for this conversation, we actually did spend a few minutes talking about resources you might find at home, and how do we help parents and families understand that the art can be found in the everyday, and so can the materials. You don't always want that, but we can really be creative and stretch boundaries. I wonder, before we transition to the closing, we'll do something fun for each of the panelists. What might be the most fun or interesting objects that you have at home that you would use to make art out of? And I'll start just by saying, when I was a kid, I loved tinfoil, tape, and string, and I can make anything out of it. So I would probably do a lot with aluminum foil. Jorge, I know you're going to be ready next, so we're going to buy everyone else time by picking on you.
Time. I have time at home, and time is an art material that artists have been making work with at the very least for 100 years now. And it's a material that sometimes that we don't take up in the classroom.
Love that. Thank you. Jasmine?
Well, this is something I already kind of do, is I use cake piping bags to like paint and stuff like that. So that's something I would say that's a pretty cool thing. Especially if anybody ever tries it, use really, really thick acrylic paint or thick medium, and you can practically paint like you're decorating a cake on a canvas. So
That's so fun. I never thought. I love that idea. Nemisa?
I still have my embroidery yarn, so embroidering for sure.
Oh, great. I might put in a request. And Mr. Nab?
I have saved, for years and years through my teaching, almost every marker cap from the markers that have died. And I have boxes full of marker caps that I thought someday I will paint a picture with using those as my color. So
Yeah,
I've got but I have saved, like our teachers, I save all kinds of weird stuff, but I thought that'd be kind of cool someday.
love that idea. So hopefully, our fun little exercise there gave folks some ideas, but I'm gonna wrap us up. We have a few forward-looking things we're going to share in a minute, but I once again want to thank our panelists. So thanks to Jorge, to Jasmine, to Tom, and Nemisa again for joining us. Looking ahead, we have a special, next week, we have a very special town hall. It's a special edition. It's Arts, Our Education. It's a new campaign. That's an advocacy campaign across all art forms in champion and support of art education. And there are great actionable ways to get involved. And we encourage everyone to join us, because it's going to be really helpful to communicate the value and impact of your program to decision makers for the forthcoming year. So please consider joining us. And we mentioned the Remote Learning Toolkit. These are curated resources by all of the elementary, middle school, high school, university, museum, community, supervision, administration, pre-service, everyone can find tools here. And we have these great tip sheets for remote learning, for careful in-person instruction, but also we have a brand new one that's getting started with equity, diversity, inclusion. No matter where you are in your journey, you could engage with this document, and it is so chock full of links and resources to expand your knowledge and your practice. We highly encourage folks use the QR code and download any of these tools. They are free and accessible, NAEA's gift to our community. And our webinar for February is on collaboration and teacher practice. Please consider joining us on Wednesday, February 17th from 7 to 8 p.m. And those are for credit. I know we saw that question in the chat. And we also have some great open letters. Tom especially has helped me on these a lot. These are the voice of our board and members on important issues. So these make the case to school decision makers for K-12 art programs and staff. That makes the case for museum educators, for the connection with pre-service and higher education, and also a really powerful Black Lives Matter open letter from James Rowling, our incoming president. And these are all great resources, and I always talk about these because sometimes folks need them and don't realize they exist. Once again, NAEA's gift to our community. These are free and accessible, easy PDF downloads. Share them with decision makers. Use them widely. A couple more things, and we're almost there. We are so excited, and I'm excited to invite everybody to our first virtual national convention for NAEA. Look, we're almost 75 years old next year, and this will be our first massive, probably the largest virtual convening of art educators you're ever going to find. Prices are slashed. This is the most affordable conference you're going to find for 400 plus sessions from colleagues and peers that understand your life. These are creative solutions, teaching strategies, collaborative strategies, ways to advocate, but also to address the present moment, resources and tools for the COVID classroom. But we also have these great inspiring keynotes. We have Mo Willems, celebrated author and illustrator, Elephant and Piggy, Pigeon, Knuffle Bunny. We have Jason Reynolds, who's probably the most famous young author right now for teen audiences right now. Some really powerful ED&I work that he's doing. Second City is creating a tailor-made sketch comedy piece about art education. You don't want to miss that. And then, of course, Carrie Mae Weems is our closing keynote, and she's such a prolific artist and really loves our community. So please consider joining us. It's coming up here March 4th to 7th. And the best part is that if you register, you get access to all the recorded content for 6 months, which is basically like professional development for the rest of your life. You'll get so much content. We urge you to take advantage of this. Thank you very much. And we have extended our promotion for school arts. Thank you to Davis and our partnership. If you join and renew your membership with NAEA, you get a free 1-year subscription to School Arts Magazine. If you're like me, I have every issue in my archives. I pull them out all the time as a reference. These are great resources. So please take advantage of this as a member. We would love to really make good on our partnership with Davis. So take advantage of that. And because we spent some time talking about our National Art Honor Society, we didn't want to lose the moment to really encourage folks to start a chapter, middle school or high school. It's a great way, like Namisa said, to build community, give back to the community through the arts. But also, if you're graduating, you get your beautiful tassels and cords that show that you have participated in and you value the arts. And that's something to take on your transcripts and into your future. Great thing for art teachers as leaders in their school communities. And then last but not least, and we're just 1 minute over, we like to give you immediate tools. So all of our guests tonight, thank you so much, contributed to this handy dandy, downloadable, immediate, ready to go document. Use that QR code and you get tips and recommendations for tonight's topic about this arts education continuum, but also beautiful tips to take care of yourself for self-care. So please download this. Everything's available on the NAEA website under Town Hall for these resources. And once again, I'm Mario Lucero, and I thank you so much for joining us, and take good care. Good night. Thank you all so much. That was awesome.